Every day, thousands of us climb into the back of a minivan. We see it as the ultimate symbol of suburban safety, a steel cocoon, meticulously engineered to protect the people we value most. But on April 10, 2018, for a 16-year-old boy named Kyle Plush, the family car transformed into a predatory machine. It didn't crash. It didn't explode. It simply waited for him to lean over a seat, and then it snapped shut like a Venus flytrap, pinning him inside a dark, pressurized void. What followed was a 6-hour descent into a localized purgatory, a nightmare where help was close enough to touch, yet as distant as the stars. This is not just a story of a mechanical failure. It is the story of a boy who did everything right, and a system that failed to hear his screams. The afternoon at Seven Hills School in Cincinnati was bathed in the kind of ordinary light that makes tragedy seem impossible. Kyle was a sophomore, a bright kid with a tennis match on his schedule. He walked to his 2004 gold Honda Odyssey to grab his gear, a mundane task he had performed countless times. But as he reached over the third-row bench seat, his world inverted. A latch failed. A heavy spring released. The seat flipped backward, hurling Kyle into the storage well and pinning him upside down. Imagine the suddenness of it. One moment, you're thinking about your backhand. The next, you're folded in half, 70 pounds of metal and foam crushing your chest, your feet dangling where your head should be. This is the terror of positional asphyxia. It's a silent, internal execution. When the body is inverted and the chest is compressed, every exhale becomes a desperate gamble. You can let the air out, but the weight of the seat and the pull of gravity mean you CA and draw it back in. Your lungs fight against your own ribcage. Your heart races, pumping blood that is increasingly starved of oxygen. In this state, panic is your greatest enemy, yet it's the only thing your brain knows how to do. Kyle was trapped in a space no larger than a suitcase, staring at the floor mats, while the sun continued to shine outside the tinted glass. But Kyle Plush was brilliant. Even as his oxygen levels plummeted and the pressure on his torso intensified, his mind remained sharp. He couldn't reach his phone with his hands. They were pinned beneath him, but he knew he had one weapon left, his voice. He called out to the void. He activated Siri. He commanded the machine to call for help. At 3:16 p.m., the first 911 call connected. If you listen to the audio, you aren't just hearing a phone call. You are hearing the sound of a human being fighting a war for a single breath. He told the dispatcher exactly where he was. He told them he was going to die. He gave them the name of the school. He gave them his life in a series of labored gasps. The dispatcher, Amber Smith, received the call. The audio is garbled, a mix of Kyle's strained voice and the phone's automated responses. She heard his cries for help, but struggled to understand the details. Crucially, she couldn't make out his exact location within the school parking lot. She relayed the information she had: a person trapped in a gold Honda Odyssey at Seven Hills School. 2 officers, Edsel Bourne and Brian Brazile, were dispatched to the scene. They arrived at the sprawling school campus, which had multiple parking lots. They drove through the main lot, a sea of cars, scanning for a gold Honda Odyssey with someone in distress. They saw nothing out of the ordinary. They checked another lot, then another. The minivan was parked in a smaller, more remote lot near the tennis courts, away from the main flow of traffic. The officers didn't see it. After searching for about 11 minutes, unable to locate the vehicle and with no one flagging them down, they marked the incident as no fault found and cleared the scene. Meanwhile, Kyle was still trapped, still fighting. The pressure was building. His body was shutting down. But his will was unbroken. He managed to make a second 911 call at 3:35 p.m. This time, he was connected to a different dispatcher, Stephanie McGee. His voice was weaker, more desperate. He repeated his location. He begged them to send help. He pleaded, "This is not a joke. I am trapped inside my gold Honda Odyssey van. Send officers immediately. I'm almost dead." This call was clearer. The urgency was undeniable. But a catastrophic error occurred. The information from the second, more desperate call was never relayed to the officers on the scene. A technical glitch in the computer-aided dispatch system, combined with a failure in communication protocol, meant that the officers who were still on campus, or at least nearby, never learned that the boy they were looking for had called back. They were blind to his escalating crisis. They left, believing it was a false alarm. Imagine Kyle's perspective. He had done the impossible. Trapped and suffocating, he had successfully called for help not once, but twice. He had heard sirens in the distance. He must have believed help was on its way, that any second a window would be broken and he would be pulled into the fresh air. But the sirens faded. The silence returned, deeper and more profound than before. Hope, once so close, was now extinguished. The hours crawled by. The school emptied out. The sun began to set, casting long shadows across the parking lot. Kyle's parents, Ron and Jill Plush, grew worried. Kyle was always punctual. When he didn't show up for his tennis match or answer their calls, they knew something was wrong. They used a phone tracking app and saw his phone was still in the school parking lot. His father, Ron, drove to the school, his heart pounding with a dread he couldn't yet name. He found the gold Honda Odyssey in the quiet lot by the tennis courts. Everything looked normal from the outside. The doors were locked. He peered through the windows but couldn't see anything clearly in the dimming light. He called a friend who was a sheriff's deputy, explaining the situation. The deputy arrived and, together, they managed to unlock the van. It was Ron who made the discovery. As he opened the rear hatch, he saw his son. Kyle was unresponsive, wedged upside down behind the third-row seat, the seat that had become his tomb. It was 9 p.m., nearly 6 hours after his first desperate call for help. Paramedics were called, but it was far too late. Kyle Plush was pronounced dead at the scene. The cause of death was confirmed as positional asphyxia, a slow, torturous suffocation caused by the weight of his own body and the seat pinning his chest. The aftermath was a storm of grief, outrage, and investigation. How could this happen? How could a boy call 911 twice, tell them exactly where he was, and still die alone in a parking lot? The investigation focused on the failures of the 911 dispatch center. It revealed a system plagued by understaffing, outdated technology, and a culture of complacency. The dispatcher from the first call, Amber Smith, was found to have had a history of performance issues. She later resigned. The second dispatcher, Stephanie McGee, was criticized for not ensuring the new information was passed on. The computer system that failed to log the second caller's location data became a symbol of systemic neglect. The city of Cincinnati launched a full-scale review of its emergency response system, leading to sweeping changes in technology, training, and protocols. But the tragedy also raised questions about the vehicle itself. Was this a freak accident? Or was it a known defect? Honda had previously issued a recall for a latch issue on the second-row seats of some Odyssey models, but not for the third-row seat that trapped Kyle. The Plush family filed a wrongful death lawsuit against Honda and the city, arguing that both a faulty design and a failed emergency response were responsible for their son's death. The case of Kyle Plush is a story of converging failures. A mechanical failure in a trusted family car, a technological failure in a critical emergency system, and a human failure to listen, to communicate, and to act. It is a haunting reminder that the systems we rely on for our safety are only as strong as their weakest link. But more than anything, this is the story of a boy's incredible courage. Trapped in the most terrifying situation imaginable, Kyle Plush never gave up. He fought for every breath. He used his intelligence and his voice to try and save his own life. He did everything right. His legacy is not just in the changes made to Cincinnati's 911 system, or the increased awareness about positional asphyxia. His legacy is a powerful and heartbreaking testament to the strength of the human spirit in the face of an unforgiving world. It forces us to ask ourselves, when the call for help comes, will we be ready to answer? Thank you for watching. If this story touched you, please share it to spread awareness. And if you or someone you know is ever in an emergency, don't hesitate to call for help. Your voice matters. Don't forget to subscribe for more content like this. 10 minutes later, flashing lights cut through the afternoon haze. For most, those red and blue strobes signal the end of a nightmare. But for Kyle, trapped and suffocating, they were the start of a far deeper horror. He was inside the van, listening to the muffled thrum of police cruisers idling just feet away, the sound of gravel crunching under their tires. He was screaming, but the soundproofed Odyssey had become his tomb. The officers, for the most part, stayed in their cars. They scanned the lot, looking for someone standing, for signs of a struggle. They didn't see a boy waving, so they assumed there was no boy at all. The disconnect was absolute. The crucial detail, that Kyle was in a gold van, never reached the officers standing right next to it. They were staring at the answer to the puzzle, but they hadn't been given the clues. By 3:35 p.m., a chilling realization must have washed over Kyle. The first wave of help, the cavalry he had so desperately summoned, was leaving. He called 911 again. This second call is perhaps one of the most devastating pieces of audio ever recorded in the history of emergency services. He wasn't just asking for help anymore, he was settling his affairs. He gave the make, the model, and the color of the van. He told the dispatcher he was almost dead. And then, he spoke the words that no mother should ever have to hear through a speaker. "Tell my mom I love her if I die." He was 16 years old, staring at the carpet of a minivan, realizing that the adults, the officers, the very systems built to protect him, were walking away. Just 2 minutes later, at 3:37 p.m., the officers cleared the scene. They left. The parking lot fell silent, save for the ticking of a cooling engine and the fading heartbeat of a boy who had been forgotten. For the next 5 hours, the gold Honda Odyssey sat in that sophomore parking lot like a monument to systemic failure. Students walked by, laughing and talking about their day. Coaches blew whistles on the practice field. Life, in all its vibrant detail, continued to unfold around a vehicle that held a dying secret. The tragedy of Kyle Plush isn't just that he died, but that he died while being ignored. He became a ghost before his heart even stopped beating. It wasn't until 9 p.m. that his father, driven by a parent's unshakable intuition and a phone tracking app, found the van. He found his son exactly where Kyle said he would be. He found a boy who had fought for 6 long hours in the dark, only to be failed by a broken radio system and a catastrophic lack of imagination. The aftermath was a storm of grief, outrage, and litigation. A $6 million settlement was eventually paid to the family. Investigations cleared the officers of wrongdoing, citing communication failures. And in an effort to prevent such a tragedy from ever happening again, the Kyle Plush Answer Center was established, a state-of-the-art facility designed to ensure that number 911 call ever falls through the cracks again. We like to tell ourselves that we have fixed the problem. We like to believe that new technology has finally closed the gap between our cries for help and the hands that are supposed to catch us. We sleep a little better at night thinking that the magic seat in the back of the Honda Odyssey has been recalled, the latches reinforced. But the true, lingering horror of this case isn't mechanical. It's the chilling realization that you can do everything right. You can be smart, you can be calm under pressure, you can give the exact coordinates of your location, and the world can still, for 1,000 different reasons, simply choose not to see you. The real failure wasn't just in the equipment, it was in the human system that operated it. It was a failure to listen, a failure to connect, and a failure. It was a Tuesday afternoon, April 10th, 2018. A perfectly normal day at Seven Hills School in Cincinnati. The sun was out, casting that gentle, ordinary light that makes you think nothing bad could ever happen. 16-year-old Kyle Plush, a sophomore with a bright future ahead of him, was getting ready for a tennis match. He walked over to his family's 2004 gold Honda Odyssey to grab his gear, a simple task he'd done 100 times before. He leaned over the third-row bench seat to get his things from the back. And in that split second, the world turned upside down. A latch failed. A powerful spring mechanism released. The heavy seat snapped backward with incredible force, flipping Kyle into the rear storage well. He was trapped, pinned upside down. One moment he was thinking about tennis, the next, he was folded in half, with 70 pounds of metal and upholstery crushing his chest. His feet were where his head should have been. This is the silent, horrifying reality of positional asphyxia. Your body is inverted, your chest is compressed, and breathing becomes impossible. You can breathe out, but the weight on your chest and the force of gravity won't let you breathe back in. Your lungs are fighting a losing battle against your own body. Panic takes over, consuming the little oxygen you have left. Kyle was trapped in a space smaller than a suitcase, staring at the floor mats, while outside, the afternoon sun just kept shining. Even in this terrifying situation, as his oxygen was running out and the pressure mounted, Kyle's mind was sharp. He was brilliant. He couldn't reach his phone with his hands, which were pinned under him, but he had one tool left, his voice. He used it to activate Siri and commanded his phone to call 911. At 3:16 p.m., the first call went through. The recording of that call is one of the most difficult things you will ever hear. It's the sound of a human being fighting for every single breath. He told the dispatcher exactly where he was, at the 7 Hill School. He told them he was trapped in his gold Honda Odyssey. In a series of strained gasps, he said, "I'm going to die here." He gave them all the information they needed to save his life. For Kyle, it was the start of an even deeper horror. He was inside the van, almost certainly hearing the police cruisers idling just feet away. He probably heard the sound of their boots on the gravel. He was screaming for help, but the van was like a soundproof tomb. The officers, for their part, stayed in their cars for most of the initial search. They drove through the parking lot, looking for someone in distress, maybe a person standing outside, waving their arms. They were looking for a struggle. They didn't see a boy waving, so they assumed the call was a prank or a mistake. They reported seeing no one. A critical breakdown in communication had occurred. The specific information Kyle had so desperately provided, that he was trapped inside a gold van, never made it to the officers on the scene. They were literally feet away from him, looking right at the van where he was dying, but they had no idea. They were staring at the solution to the puzzle but had never been given the clues. After about 11 minutes, believing it was a false alarm, the officers left the scene. They marked the incident as no call. Back inside the van, Kyle must have felt a wave of despair wash over him as he heard the sounds of the police fading away. He knew his time was running out. But he didn't give up. He used his voice again, activating Siri for a second time. At 3:35 p.m., nearly 20 minutes after his first call, he was on the line with 911 again. This second recording is perhaps the most devastating piece of audio in the history of emergency services. He wasn't just begging for help anymore. He was saying goodbye. He repeated the make, model, and color of the van. He told the dispatcher, "I'm almost dead." And then, he spoke the words that no parent should ever have to hear. He said, "Tell my mom I love her if I die." He was a 16-year-old boy, trapped and alone, realizing that the systems designed to protect him had failed. He was staring at the carpet of his family's minivan, understanding that the adults, the police, the dispatchers, everyone he was counting on, had left him. For almost 6 agonizing hours, Kyle remained trapped. His father found him later that evening, around 9 p.m., after Kyle failed to come home. He had been gone the whole time, right there in the school parking lot. This tragedy wasn't just an accident. It was a catastrophic system failure. The 911 dispatcher from the first call was unable to relay the information correctly. The police officers on the scene didn't have the full picture. The computer-aided dispatch system itself had technical issues. It was a perfect storm of human error and technological breakdown. Kyle's story forced the city of Cincinnati, and indeed the entire country, to take a hard look at its emergency response systems. In the aftermath, investigations were launched, and significant changes were made. Cincinnati overhauled its 911 call center, implementing new training, staffing protocols, and technology to prevent something like this from ever happening again. The dispatcher who handled Kyle's first call was placed on leave and later resigned. The officers involved faced an internal investigation. The car manufacturer, Honda, also faced scrutiny over the design of the seat latch mechanism, which had been the subject of a recall notice years earlier, though the Plush family's van had reportedly been serviced. But beyond the investigations and the policy changes, there is the human story. The story of a vibrant young man whose life was cut short. His parents, Ron and Jill Plush, channeled their unimaginable grief into action, creating the Kyle Plush Answer the Call Foundation. Their mission is to ensure that no other family has to endure what they went through, advocating for improvements in 911 infrastructure and training nationwide. They are fighting to make sure every call for help is answered. Kyle's last words were a message of love for his mother. It shows the incredible strength and character of this young man, who, even in his final moments, was thinking of others. His story is a heartbreaking reminder of how fragile life is, and how quickly a normal day can turn into an unthinkable tragedy. It is a call to action for all of us to demand better from the systems we rely on for our safety. Kyle Plush deserved to play his tennis match that day. He deserved to go home to his family. His memory serves as a powerful, permanent reminder that we must do better. At 3:37 p.m., the officers cleared the scene. Their cruisers pulled out of the lot, marking the assignment as complete just as the last of Kyle's strength began to fade. The parking lot fell silent, with only the ticking of a cooling engine and the fading heartbeat of a forgotten boy. The official record would say the search lasted a mere 11 minutes, a blink of an eye in a day, but an eternity for someone whose lungs are being crushed. The cold, mechanical indifference of the paperwork was a brutal contrast to the human agony happening inside that gold van. For the next 5 hours, the gold Honda Odyssey sat in the sophomore parking lot like a monument to systemic failure. Students walked by, their laughter echoing through the air as they headed home for dinner. Coaches blew whistles, and the sounds of ordinary school life continued in high definition all around a vehicle that was holding a dying secret. The tragedy of Kyle Plush isn't just that he died, but that he died while being ignored. He was a ghost before his heart even stopped beating, a prisoner of a communication gap that turned a crowded school campus into a deserted island. It wasn't until 9 p.m. that his father, driven by a parent's intuition and a tracking app, finally arrived at the school. The search had grown desperate as the hours passed without a word from Kyle. When Ronald Plush found the van, he found his son exactly where Kyle said he would be. But the rescue he had hoped for was now a recovery. He found a boy who had fought for 6 hours in the dark, a boy who had used every tool at his disposal only to be failed by a broken radio, a frozen computer screen, and a staggering lack of human imagination. The aftermath was a storm of litigation and collective grief that shook the city of Cincinnati to its core. A $6 million settlement was eventually paid, and high-ranking officials resigned under the weight of public outrage. The Kyle Plush Answer Center was built to ensure that No. 911 call ever falls through the cracks again, implementing better GPS tracking and rigorous training for dispatchers. We like to tell ourselves that we have fixed the problem, that the magic seat in the back of the van has been recalled and the protocols have been perfected. We sleep better thinking that technology has finally closed the gap between our cries for help and the hands that reach back. But the true horror of this case isn't mechanical, and it isn't something that can be fixed with a software update. It is the realization that you can do everything right. You can be smart, you can be calm, you can give the exact coordinates of your location, and the world can still choose not to see you. It is the fear that in our modern, connected age, we are more isolated than ever. Kyle's final breath was spent on a promise to improve a system that had failed him. As we sit in our own cars today, we are forced to wonder, if we called out from the dark, would anyone truly be listening?